Punch Out. I'm Jason Gilbo, Jake Gilbo 11. With me is Nick Tasso at the Inefficient 2, taking a look at the FanDuel 12-game slate here for Sunday. And overall, I mean, it's not really a strong pitching slate. You got a couple of top arms, but overall, I think it's probably going to be more of an offensive day, if anything.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's a lot of nice priced bats on this slate, and I just think there's a lot of combinations you could kind of go with here and a lot of good matchups for hitters. So I think it's going to be one of those Sundays where you can have a lot of fun and just kind of go wild.
Yeah, definitely. And jumping right into the first game here, you got the Giants in Yankee Stadium. Jeff Samardzija is pitching today, which I think works out well for some of these Yankees bats. You also have Nathan Eovaldi pitching for the Yankees. Brandon Belt, I mean, I was looking at DK, and this is kind of off topic, but DK, Brandon Belt's super cheap. Here he's 3.9, kind of more appropriately priced for the matchup. I still like him, but obviously I not as much as I do kind of on DraftKings.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think he's kind of overpriced here. Not too bad, but just one of those things you really don't want to spend $3,900 for Brandon Belt, basically almost on any slate. So I'm probably going to fade him here. One guy that I really like out of this lineup is Denard Span leading off. He's only $2,900 on this slate, so I kind of like him. He gets a lot of at-bats, and against Eovaldi, I think he should be able to get a couple hits here or there, maybe even a stolen base if McCann's behind the plate.
Yeah, I think so too, and I like Brandon Crawford at 2,900, another lefty against Eovaldi. I think those are the only kind of two guys I really am looking at here, just kind of trying to attack Eovaldi with a couple of lefties in that ballpark. As far as the Yankees bats go, I mean, I do like them 1 through 5 here. I mean, Samardzija really hasn't been the most reliable right-hander. You date back to last year, he struggled with left-handed bats. I mean, in that stadium, it's not a good place to do it. So I kind of like the value here, and I think guys like Beltran and McCann are probably a little stronger options than guys like Ellsbury and Gardner, but you really can't knock them either.
Yeah, I don't mind McCann in this slate just because he's always kind of deadly to pull one over the right field fence. And you look at Samardzija, and he's really been up and down basically his entire career, especially the last few seasons. So I don't mind McCann here. And I mean, even if you go to Sheriff, he's somehow in the lineup. I don't mind him at that same price tag.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, Teixeira, I think those guys are – Teixeira is a great GPP option because I don't see many kind of spending down at first base just because there are a lot of kind of top-priced guys you want to go after. So I think it is a good swerve there.
Yeah, absolutely. Typically at first base, it's a stacked position. So a lot of players, they'll kind of go right for one of those top guys, get that sure production from them. But I feel like Teixeira, if he connects with one, even a couple hits here, he could really kind of match someone who's priced pretty high.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, that's one of the things you're looking at for GPPs. You're trying to want to make that value move that can match a production of a top price guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Teixeira is slowly kind of coming around. He's had a rough season, but I think injuries aside and everything, he's turning it around.
Yeah, definitely agree. So definitely kind of a game that could be a little bit sneaky on a full slate like today.
Yeah, absolutely, because there's some obvious games you want to attack, and on this slate with this game, there are a few good options. It's just nothing that stands immediately out to most players.
Yeah, definitely. Mariners and Blue Jays next one here. You got two lefties on the hill, Wade Miley versus J.A. Happ, and I think we can kind of be a little bit, maybe a bit quicker with the Mariners here as far as what bats we want to target. And obviously, I think the standout one is Nelson Cruz, who at 3,200 against the lefty in the Rogers Center becomes one of the guys who I'm going to probably be immediately plugging in right after I lock in the pitcher.
Yeah, the guys I had was Cruz, Zanino, and also Dalen Ho. So, it's Lee. Sorry, I would just call him Ho. Sorry about that. But I think they both are in some good matchups here. I know Zanino just got called up, and I don't know. I know Jay Happ's pretty good pitcher, but it is the Rogers Center, and he does sometimes struggle against righties. And like we've kind of stated in previous pods, this Mariners offense can really do damage against lefties.
Yeah, they definitely can. I mean, when they sneak in a couple of those right-handed bats, they do have some solid splits, and I do like Zunino as a punt option. And I really just can't get away from that Cruz price. Like, I was just kind of baffled when I saw it that he was priced so low. I expected him in kind of the upper 3K range, even pushing 4. But that's not the case, and we got ourselves a gift for today.
Yeah, absolutely. I always feel like FanDuel sometimes drops the ball on certain players, and I feel like they do that a lot with Nelson Cruz. I mean, just to big picture here, Adam Lind, who's a lefty who won't even play, is $200 more than Nelson Cruz on this slate. So when you guys got players that low, you kind of just got to go with it.
Yeah, definitely. And on the Blue Jays side, I mean, it's a weaker lefty with Wade Miley. Obviously, I think if you're looking at third base position, if you're looking to pay up, it's got to be for Josh Donaldson. I mean, I know he's pricey, but I feel like given the pitching, there's not really a lot of top price guys. There's no one over 11K, so you can kind of feel reasonable about making one, push for a top end guy, and that could be Donaldson for me today.
No, I agree with you there. Right around that same kind of price range. I actually don't mind Michael Saunders. I mean, he's been hitting lefties pretty well this year, and he's red hot right now. So I wouldn't mind throwing him into this lineup as well. You look at Miley, he might not last too long, and he could face a couple at bats against righties. And I think just because it's a lefty-lefty matchup, his ownership level might be down than most days.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't even mind some of these back end pieces like a Troy Tulowitzki or a Devin Travis. I mean, both middle infield guys at 3K. Decent value for a team that's projected for over 5 runs. So against the lefty Myler, I don't mind those guys either.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And you look at Tulowitzki too. He's another guy who started to really turn it around. And against lefty, these Blue Jays bats really are dangerous threats on most nights.
Yeah, definitely. So I think this is one of those friendlier offenses that's going to be kind of one of the obvious targets today.
Yeah, they're probably going to be where I'm starting my lineups with.
Yeah, definitely. And this next game here, Diamondbacks and Reds. And for me, I mean, Paul Goldschmidt, Joey Votto, two guys that are at 4K. Personally, for me, I mean, those are my two favorite first basemen on the slate. I mean, Goldschmidt against a lefty in a friendly ballpark, and then you got Votto, who's just absolutely on fire over the last few weeks, both sitting in really good matchups. I like this game quite a bit, really on both sides.
Absolutely. Just like the Rogers Center game, this Great American Ballpark game is another one you have to kind of target. Kind of torn between Votto and Goldschmidt, but I'd probably shy in the way of Votto just because he's been so good lately. And I know Finnegan kind of struggles, but I think he's a little bit better pitcher than Zach Godley. So I kind of would go Votto if I had to make a decision between those two.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And as far as catchers go on this slate, I mean, Wellington Castillo against a lefty in a friendly park. If he's in the lineup at 2,800, that's a really nice value price for him.
Absolutely. I mean, last year he only really played against lefties, and now that they're utilizing him a lot more with a new team, I think he can still kind of destroy lefties. And that price tag, 2,800, is extremely low for him. So he's kind of in that Nelson Cruz price range. When it gets that low, you kind of got to play him.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's a guy who I'll definitely be starting in. I mean, certainly a cash game catcher for me. And outside of him, I mean, I don't mind some of those back end guys like a Drury or Yasmani Tomas. I mean, given their value. And you mentioned Finnegan. I mean, a little bit better arm than Godley, but I still think that home run potential is there for a lot of those right-handers.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like I said, Great American Ballpark is a haven for home runs right now, so it's going to be a lot of hitters going yard in this game. The thing about Arizona is they never really seem to have the same lineup 2 days in a row. So I think you can look at their lineup when it's posted today, and just kind of see what values you can fit in here or there.
Yeah, it's definitely a good point. And on the red side, I mean, a couple other names here. I mean, Adam Duvall, really good spot. I mean, Godley's been worse off against righties than he has against lefties. So, I mean, Duvall's certainly in play at 3,600. And Billy Hamilton, I mean, given that he's up in the top of the lineup now, getting that guaranteed extra bat, I mean, the guy's just stealing bases at wheel. I mean, this series, I mean, he is, I believe, up over 4 or 5 now. So I like Billy Hamilton at that price tag at 3.2.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and I also do like Jay Bruce. He's just been so solid against righties this year. I'm not a huge fan of that price tag, 3,900, but I can definitely be talked into it if I have some salary left over.
Yeah, definitely. So I think this game overall, I mean, pretty close to, I mean, as far as both sides go, I think it could be the number one just overall game to kind of look at.
Yeah, absolutely. This game in Toronto is probably where I'm looking first for bats, and then going to move to other games.
Yeah, definitely. Mets and Marlins next one here. You got Steven Matz versus Jose Urena. Matz is a guy who I'm not really looking at to target as far as a pitcher. I just kind of feel like he's not quite right. And then with that being said, I mean, when you have Marcell Ozuna and Giancarlo Stanton both at 2,500 and 3K, I know, obviously Matz is a quality left-handed arm, but given those bats against lefties, I'm going to probably be tossing them into some GPPs just given their upside.
Absolutely. You look at the Marlins bats, and they have a lot of upside. And going up against the lefty, even though it is Steven Matz, I think they still could connect here or there. And even I like JT Realmuto as well. He's only 2,800 leading off, so I don't mind him. And obviously, Stanton has that immense power.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think given their prices, the fact that Matz isn't quite what he was earlier in the season, I think you can kind of give him a look. And obviously, it's not still the most comfortable situation to put him in, where I think their floor is relatively still low, but the upside is a little higher than maybe where I would rate him, let's say, a month and a half ago when Matz was pitching relatively well.
Yeah, I agree with you. And kind of for that fact, I think they're only GPP plays. I think they're all going to do pretty well. It's just one of those things where it is Steven Matz and is in a bad ballpark for home runs and base hits. So I wouldn't play him in cash, but those prices are really appetizing.
Yeah, definitely. And on the other side, I mean, I kind of like some of the Mets' value here. I mean, Jose Urina's kind of struggled against both sides of the plate. Jose Reyes has kind of showed off that he can still kind of put together some DFS relevance for us. And at 2,500, I don't mind that as a value.
No, absolutely. He's probably the only guy that I would play from the Mets side on this matchup. I mean, I think a lot of their other players, Cespedes, Walker, kind of higher price than I really want to go. And 2,500, Jose Reyes is kind of just right at that price tag.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think the other guys kind of sit around other bats that I like a little bit more. So I think price considered that. I do think they are in play and they could put together some runs, of course, but they're definitely not my first couple of choices of teams to target.
No, absolutely. And the only knock about Jose Reyes is even though he's only 2,500, he's only eligible at third base, which really kind of hinders where I'd rank him just because there are a lot of good options at third base.
Yeah, I mean, if he was shortstop, I'd feel a lot better about plugging him in. I feel okay. But, I mean, given a position where maybe you want to chalk in a Donaldson, it's kind of tough to justify using Reyes over him, even though it is a good price difference.
No, absolutely. That's a huge thing. If he was shortstop, I'd plug him in and Nelson Cruz and just go from there. But unfortunately, you can't do that. And Reyes, yeah, he can get the stolen bases and all that good stuff. But he typically is a guy who needs at least a couple at-bats to really do some damage for DFS teams.
Yeah, definitely. And this next game here, I mean, Phillies and Pirates, for me, I mean, I'm looking at it more so from a pitcher standpoint. I like Vincent Velasquez at 8,700, even though he is an underdog, but I do think there's some relatively high strikeout upside with him against a Pirates team that's really slipping in offense. And then obviously, I mean, Jameson Taillon, a decent favorite, a really solid matchup against the Phillies at 6,800. I mean, that's a pitcher where you can really stack some bats in and feel pretty comfortable about it.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I actually don't mind both. I mean, we all know how Velasquez is extremely good. And against this Pittsburgh team, I know they can have kind of outbursts of runs, but typically they really don't. So I don't mind deploying him here. And again, Italian, that price tag is really cheap, and he hasn't performed too bad, especially lately. So I don't mind him here. Philly's offense, as we all know, isn't that great. They had, I believe, Peter Borges leading off the other day. So, that's never a good sign for your team. So I can definitely kind of be talked into both of these guys.
Yeah, I definitely could too. And I think with that being said, I mean, on a 12-game slate, I really don't feel comfortable rostering any of these hitters. I mean, I think that just the slate's big enough for me to kind of completely overlook it.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, there's no one I really like. The only guy I typically like is Herrera, but he's priced out of the range I like to play him. So I'm probably staying away from most of these bats.
Yeah, and on to this next one. I mean, here's another situation where we got a cheap pitcher, and it's Nationals take on the Padres. Lucas Giolito's making a start again for the Nationals. I mean, how does he play out to you? I mean, is he a GPP look, or do you think Taillon, given the similar price tags, a little bit easier to kind of put in instead?
I actually don't mind Giolito. I mean, he's shown some somewhat decent stats so far. I know it hasn't really progressed and shown well in DFS, but he's performed okay. And I think against this Padres lineup, you really don't need a great starter to really rack up some fantasy points for you.
No, you really don't. I mean, I think given their strikeout rate, I mean, 24% against right-handed pitching. I mean, projected for under 4 runs. Giolito, I mean, minus 200 favorite for the Nationals. So, I mean, for me, I mean, if you were looking for solely a win, I mean, I think Giolito is probably the safer bet over Talion just because of the pitching on the other side with Velasquez. But obviously, I think the strikeout upside is a little bit higher for Giolito, and I definitely don't mind him much to your point that GPP target. I think he's fairly viable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's 7,000, and you look at him, and he does have the strikeout potential there. He really hasn't shown too much of that, though. But I think that's going to come one of these days. And you look at this Padres offense, like you just touched on, and the huge strikeout rate is just one of those things that this could be probably his best outing. It hopefully will be his best outing. Probably go a little bit longer than what he's typically used to. So hopefully that's a good sign for him.
Yeah, definitely. And on the national side, as far as bats go, I mean, I like these right-handers. I like a Wilson Ramos at 3.3, a Jason Worth at 3.5. I mean, maybe you see a Rendon or Trey Turner slip up into the top of the lineup, and we've seen Trey Turner go up and hit leadoff against lefties a couple times this year. He would be a nice value play opening up at shortstop for 2,700.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I like Trey Turner. Nice price tag as well. And keep an eye, too, if they give some guys days off. Chris Heisey's in there. He kind of hits lefties pretty well, so I wouldn't mind deploying him in there as well.
Yeah, definitely not. So I think that Nationals lineup could be one to really target. And I'm not saying it'll get overlooked. I mean, Worth is probably going to be a popular play. But I think you can kind of get some of those secondary pieces for a little bit lower ownership.
I agree with you there. And like you pointed out, I really like Wilson Ramos, which his price tag was a little bit lower, but he's really hit lefties extremely well this year too. So I'd like to play him a decent amount.
Yeah, definitely. I think if Wellington Castillo sits out, for some reason I have a hunch that he might just because he's caught the last few games. It just makes it easier to kind of bump up and deploy Ramos.
I agree with you.
Look at the next game here. You got the Twins and Red Sox. Rick Porcello versus Tommy Malone. Rick Porcello, I mean, 8,600 going up against the Twins offense that's, bottom 10 in WOBA against righties. I'm not quite sure I feel comfortable using Porcello, even though he is a slight discount from a couple of guys up top. I just don't feel comfortable using him in cash games. I mean, GPPs, I guess you could say the upside's there and a win's likely. That's probably where I'd use him the most.
No, I agree with you there. I'm pretty sure Porcello, he's undefeated at home this season. So for whatever reason, even though Fenway Park is more of a hitter's ballpark, he's performed extremely well there all season. And he's just one of those pitchers where he's been doing so well that you're just kind of waiting for him to have one of those bad outings. And he hasn't really had that this year. So I think he's somewhat okay for cash games, but I definitely like him a lot more for GPPs, even though I think his ownership level will be pretty high just for the fact that he's been on a pretty good run here.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And given there really is no kind of clear-cut number one, I mean, I guess you got Lester up there, but he's not in the perfect spot, neither is Kluber, given, just top price plays. So I do think it's kind of going to be fairly balanced. He's kind of just that borderline where I might lean in favor of being cash game.
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing I disagree with him is his price tag. I think you could probably look a little bit cheaper on the slate, find a little bit better option for a little bit less price.
Yeah, definitely. And I think with Velasquez and Talion right there, I think it's kind of that's where I would make my move to.
Yeah, you got a huge savings in between those two.
Yeah. And as far as the Red Sox bats go, I mean, you're looking at some of these right-handers against Tommy Malone. Hanley Ramirez at 3,500. I mean, just another guy to talk about at first base here. I don't mind him. But for me, I mean, I like a lot of these other secondary pieces. I mean, Bryce Brents is only 2,100. I mean, if you're looking for a GPP punt play, I mean, it's a very cheap way to get exposure here. Same with Aaron Hill.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Both guys have hit lefties well. Brents hasn't really had a long history in the major leagues, but in his short time here, he has hit him well. So I both like those guys, and I don't even mind Sandy Leon if he gets another start. He's just been hitting the ball pretty well, so I would throw him in there, and it's typically probably about it. I mean, Dustin Pedroia, I think, is on a nice little tear. He's 5 for 5 the other day, so I wouldn't mind playing him, but I think his price tag is a little too high for me.
Yeah, and it's kind of the same thing. I like Bogarts too. He's solid against lefties, but I think a 4K price tag's a little bit out of my range. But obviously the matchups is good for all these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those games against Tommy Malone where you would expect a lot of runs to be scored, but just one of those things that's baseball, and you never know.
Yeah, definitely. And if you, I mean, are you taking any Twins bats? I mean, as far as GPPs go, would you look at anyone to use?
Probably not. I mean, I typically do not mind playing Max Kepler, but I think his price tag is a little bit too high for me right now.
I think Miguel Sano might be the only one I take a shot at, just given his power and his price tag. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. It's not a lot of interest here.
Yeah, I know Kepler was, I think, down to like 20 or 2,300 the other day, and that's actually was a pretty good price for him. But I think 3,000 he's too high, and I think for Sano, he has a lot of power, like you said, and he could really pull the ball. But he looking at his numbers, really hits lefties a lot better. And when you don't really have a lefty, he sometimes kind of looks lost up there.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely near that 30% strikeout rate, so he does carry that boomer bust kind of tag next to his name.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts on Vargas getting in the lineup on Sunday?
I mean, I would like to see it. I mean, I'm a fan of always kind of looking at him, or at least giving him a look against average to maybe slightly above average pitching, just because he does have tremendous power. But obviously, he's kind of like a Snow, where he does have a high strikeout rate.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's priced if he is in the line of 2,900 that you kind of can't really ask for too much more. Purcello kind of is a guy who gives up the long ball a lot. He's been a little bit better this year, but Vargas against him could really have some fireworks in this game.
Yeah, definitely. Indians and Orioles next one here. Corey Kluber versus Vance Worley, and I like Kluber in GPPs. I mean, obviously it's kind of a high risk, high reward situation against the Baltimore offense that in Camden Yards with their power numbers. I mean, obviously it's going to scare you a little bit, but I mean, just given Kluber's strikeout upside, and Baltimore does strike out quite a bit. I could see Kluber being a viable GPP option.
Yeah, I agree with you. GPP, I probably want to play him in cash just because we've seen Kluber have some pretty bad outings, and you don't want to be on the wrong side of that. But I kind of agree with you. You look at this Baltimore lineup, and they really have a lot of strikeout potential, but at the same time, they have a lot of hits potential, home run potential. So it's definitely a GPP kind of game for me.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I'm not really looking at the Orioles bats. I think it's just given their prices. I like too many other guys around that range against, not facing Kluber. So I think I'm more looking so at the Indian side of things and trying to find really the value. And I like Alani Chisenhall at 3,100. Same with the Tyler Nyquin. I think those are kind of two intriguing options in the back end there. Not quite as value, but I think value when looking in total at this lineup.
Yeah, I agree with you. The only guy I would probably play for Baltimore would be Machado, just because he's been so solid and he hits righties pretty well. But a lot of the exposure, if I get any from this game, is going to be with Cleveland. And like you said, I definitely agree with you. Lonnie Chin's and all pretty good price, and he's just one of those solid. Weird saying a solid hitter, but he's just going to get a couple hits, one or two hits a game, and that's kind of what you need at that price tag. And he can kind of connect with a home run here or there. So I don't mind deploying them against Vance Worley. At the end of the day, Vance Worley is not a good pitcher at all. So these Indians bats really should have fun against him.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if you are looking at the top of the lineup, it's kind of the usual suspects as far as Carlos Santana, Kipnis, Lindor, Napoli a little bit out of my price range. I think both him and Santana are a bit overpriced where we kind of jump back to the Goldschmidt Votto. It just seems anyone around there or even a Hanley at 3,500 just kind of gets taken out of play.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I'd probably be starting for the Indians probably with Naquin or Lindor just because the price tag 3,400 and below.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Tigers and the White Sox here, and Anibal Sanchez, and at the moment it's Jose Quintana. But with Chris Sale being scratched from his Saturday start for not wanting to wear a throwback jersey, it'll be interesting to see if he does come out. But overall, I think you're looking at these Tigers bats. I mean, obviously you'd feel a little bit more comfortable using them in GPPs if it was Quintana than Sale, but I'll kind of treat it as similarly if I might look at some of these Tigers and GPPs. Kinsler's price at 4,100 is a little bit out of my range, but when you jump at some of those other right-handers, I don't mind them in tournaments.
Absolutely, I agree with you there. You look at Detroit's and their prices are pretty low, relatively speaking. So I don't mind them against Quintana. Definitely not cash for me just because Quintana's been extremely good this year. So definitely only GPPs for me. But I do like a lot of the bats, including Victor Martinez. He's only 2,800, so I wouldn't mind deploying him.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. And on the other side, I mean, it's Anibal Sanchez who's been beat up really from both sides of the plate. Um, and I guess I've just been wishing that the Sox would be a little bit more consistent as far as their offense would go because their prices are always really enticing. And they're enticing again today as far as value. And it's kind of just the usual 1 through 5, 1 through 6 there now that Justin Morneau's kind of snuck into the lineup. That you feel like, they could get some runs off of Sanchez here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I really like deploying Justin Morneau. I got to stop saying that. Sorry, but it's really hot in here and I'm getting distracted. It's one of those things, one of those nights in almost August. It's no AC kind of kills it. But back to baseball. Justin Morneau, he's looked pretty good at the plate. He's only 2,700, so I like him in this matchup. And it's not too many other guys, but I don't mind Tim Anderson. He's only 3,000, so I wouldn't mind going with him and even Adamine at 3,300, top of the order. So you look at Anibal Sanchez, and he really hasn't shown too much this year. He was jettisoned from the starting rotation, and he's slowly kind of coming around and had 10 strikeouts last start, but I just don't think he's going to be consistent enough.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And I like Melky Cabrera at 3,300. A decent value outfielder. I think he's cash game playable. And I feel like he's the only one that's probably cash game playable for me out of this White Sox team.
Yeah, I don't mind Adam Eaton just because I think he has more opportunity to get base hits and even stolen bases. But I can't really disagree with you with Melky Cabrera. He's a pretty good hitter.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we've just kind of been waiting for this team to kind of chip away at a good matchup and finally kind of break loose. And one of these days it'll happen. I mean, I hope I'm on it when it happens because I've been on it enough this year. But it could be today against Sanchez.
Yeah, it's a really weird thing coming into this year. You thought the White Sox offense would be just a great offense, and they really haven't shown too much. Everyone's striking out, having terrible batting averages, and they're just not putting anything together. So hopefully it comes one of these days, but just really don't know. I think if it doesn't come against Anibal Sanchez, it's going to be hard pressed to find out when they will have one of those outings.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Cubs and Brewers next one here. Junior Guerra versus John Lester. And Lester here, I mean, he's a guy who he's one of those ones where on this slate, I do feel comfortable kind of using him in cash games out of the top end options. A little higher favorite than Kluber. Obviously, still not a great ballpark, and obviously not a perfect matchup. But you look at the strikeout rate for Milwaukee. Obviously, even though they do have a lot of right-handed bats, they're still not that great against lefties. They are kind of that middle of the road team. And I do think Lester rebounded nicely to make me feel a bit comfortable about using him here in cash games.
Yeah, I agree with you about Milwaukee. They can kind of really hit mediocre lefties, but kind of really struggle against decent to pretty good lefties. We saw Francisco Liriano kind of have a good start against them and striking out a lot of batters. And I think that's something that Lester is going to do a lot against this team here on Sunday.
Yeah, I think so. And maybe the only guy I might take a look at is Ryan Braun at 3,500 in the GPP. Just because, I mean, it's not like Lester's been keeping the ball in the yard this season. I mean, he's giving up home runs kind of at an average rate. So maybe Ryan Braun at a GPP level's my only play from this Milwaukee side.
Yeah, I don't mind it there. What are your thoughts about Jonathan Villar just solely for the fact that he has a lot of stolen bases this year, 34, and we all know Lester has tons of trouble keeping runners on first base.
Yeah, I definitely like that call. I do think that stolen base upside is there just for the reasons you mentioned that, any speedster, I think against Lester, you just get on base and it just seems like it's for the most part an automatic steal just because he can't hold guys on. So I do like Villar. I mean, a GPP guy. I think there is some upside there. And Villar's been solid against lefties this year.
Yeah, he's actually had a really nice season overall, so I wouldn't mind playing him there. I kind of agree with you. I can't really play him in cash games just because I think his price tag is a little bit too high. Kind of hoping for a stolen base. You really shouldn't be doing that just because it's kind of not a guarantee. But against John Lester, for the most part, it is.
Yeah, definitely. And on this Cubs side, I mean, I'm not jumping all over them at their prices, but obviously, I mean, they're projected for over or nearly 5 runs in a friendly ballpark. But their prices are also a little bit higher than desired. I mean, Rizzo 800 more than a guy like Votto or Goldschmidt. That just seems way too high for me to kind of use. And obviously, Bryant's in play. I think Bryant's kind of an interesting pivot off of Donaldson.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Chris Bryant is a phenomenal baseball player, and he's just been so good this year. So I don't mind kind of pivoting, like you said, off of Josh Donaldson just because everyone's going to go towards Josh Donaldson facing a lefty. And I know Guerrero's been pretty good this year, but I don't know, this Cubs offense can kind of do a lot of damage to you, to any starting pitcher, really. One of the guys I like is Dexter Fowler. I know he just came back, but he's still one of those solid Cubs hitters who can do a lot of damage. And he's only 3,600.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I like Fowler quite a bit leading off there. Very solid before he went down to the DL. But come back, I mean, first at bat, hit a homer. In that ballpark, it's really solid for lefty power. And as the price tag that you mentioned, I feel much more comfortable using that than guys around him.
Yeah, and the only other guy I would touch on would be Wilson Contreras. I know he won't catch because David Ross will, but if he finds his way in the outfield, I think he's definitely worth a look, even though he is 3,300, which is a little bit higher than what I'm typically willing to pay for him, but I don't mind him here.
No, I definitely don't either. Those secondary Cubs pieces usually are pretty solid value.
Absolutely, and even Javier Baez too. He's really turned it on lately, and he's only 2,800. So I don't mind him here. Definitely staying away from David Ross. I hope everyone knows not to play him.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either. I mean, if it was a lefty on the hill, I'd give it a shot, but not against a righty.
No, absolutely not. And now he's gonna hit 2 home runs just to prove me wrong. That's how it always works.
It is true. I mean, whenever you say something bad against someone, it's definitely they're going to come back to prove you wrong.
It's like their agent will find this video and tell their player, and he's like, "All right, I got to do something."
Angels and Astros next one here. Mike Fiers versus Tim Lincecum. As far as the pitching aspects go, I'm not really intrigued with either one, even though the Angels aren't really a strong offense. I don't find Fiers' price tag really that reasonable for me to use. I mean, how about you? Are you kind of in agreement?
No, yeah, I'm staying away from the pitching on in this game. I don't like either one of these guys. They really haven't shown too much for me to like against these decent offenses. I know Angels isn't the best offense, but they can still string together a lot of base hits, and you really never know what can happen. It's in Minute Maid, so it should be a high-scoring game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think you're probably looking for a majority of the runs on the Astros side here against Tim Lincecum. I like all the big names here. I like Springer, I like Altuve and Correa, but I think price considered, I also really do like these secondary pieces like a Valbuena or Erasmus or even a Preston Tucker as a punt play in the outfield. I think there's a tremendous amount of power, and given Lincecum's struggle so far coming back, he could be in the line for some big trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at Colby Rasmus and also Preston Tucker, and those prices under 3K. Preston Tucker almost around 2,000, and you kind of just have to go with them if they're in the lineup in good spots. I know Tucker kind of bats a little bit further down, but you kind of got to go with them once you see the lineup and play them accordingly. I know Evan Gattis really is only good against lefties, but I don't even mind him at 27 price tag.
Yeah, I don't either. And as far as the Angels side goes, I mean, Trout at 4.8, that's a little out of my price range for tonight. I just think given the fact that Donaldson 4.2, or if I'm paying up in that 4K range, it's going to be a little bit cheaper. That just seems way too high for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like it's unnecessary to pay 4,800 for him. There's a lot of other options who are only like 4,000 or even a lot less than that are kind of in more favorable spots.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if I do look at this Angels team, I mean, Cole Calhoun at 3,200, I don't mind. And even if I'm getting super contrarian, I mean, I might take a shot at Pujols.
Yeah, I don't mind Pujols. I mean, we've seen him just go off lately, so I guess plantar fasciitis isn't bothering him too much recently. And I personally don't mind, Escobar. I mean, I don't really expect much out of him, but he could find his way getting a couple hits, and 2,700 is pretty cheap. You just run into the kind of risk that we saw with Jose Reyes. Third base kind of ruins everything.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you kind of want to spend out there, but yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement. I mean, you look against right-handers have hit fires relatively well, so I don't mind some of those right-handed bats there.
Yeah, I agree with you. Even Jeffrey Marte, if he finds his way in, he's not a really good hitter, but he's somewhat okay and can hold his own at the plate.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this Angels team is notoriously known for having a back end about 5 through 9, where they're just completely bare men. I mean, it's how it is at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even Choi, he's only 2,300, and lefty against the right, he could do some damage as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I think there's going to be plenty of offense in that game. Rangers Royals next one here. Last game in the main slate. AJ Griffin versus Edison Volquez. Royals have a relatively high total here, but they're also pretty cheap. I mean, outside of Hosmer, who's 3,800, you're getting a lot of value here with this team. I really like the Royals bats for some cash game value.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, we look at AJ Griffin, and honestly, he's just one of those pitchers who can kind of give or take. There's really not a lot to like about him. I know he had some success early on in the season, but he's kind of dropped back down to earth. And you look at these Kansas City bats, and you even have Morales. He's kind of cheap. Salvador Perez, they can kind of do some damage. Even let's see, it's Escobar. He's only 2,900. So I
Yeah,
don't mind him in this matchup. Basically, I don't know. Go ahead.
yeah. I mean, I think I'm with you. It's just a matter of, it's not getting crazy with the Royals, but it just seems to be, if I need a missing piece, it just seems like they all could be at that right price tag to put them in. I mean, and Alex Gordon at 2,500, I think that's some decent value.
Yeah, and it's one of the teams too who you got to just keep an eye on the lineup because they interchange a lot of players. So you might see a guy batting a little bit higher than you would expect in a regular slate during the week rather than the weekend. So you kind of just got to wait and see approach with them.
Yeah, definitely. And on the Rangers side, I mean, there's only really two guys that I might consider, and they're both at second base, and that's Yerkes Profar and Odor. Profar, obviously, the value at 2,400, Odor at 3K, so not a ton of not really expensive guys, but I'm not a big fan of the Rangers offense here. I just think those guys probably offer the most upside and most points per dollar return.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I typically only really like to play the Texas offense when they're at home. It's just a much better ballpark than Kauffman Stadium, so we're probably going to stay away from most of the bats here. I like both guys that you touched on. I also don't mind Nomar Mazara. I know he's been dropped down a little bit in the batting order, but I feel like he can still get a couple base hits here or there, so I don't mind him.
Yeah, there's always definitely some big upside with his power.
Yeah, absolutely. I know he hasn't shown too much of that recently, but it's still there in that bat. And Kansas City, he still does kind of allow decent amount of home runs. Obviously, not the same amount as Texas, but you never know. He could find his way going up against Edison Volquez. It's sometimes it's an easy game for hitters.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in that ballpark, I mean, obviously you mentioned it's fairly tough. Day game, a little different. I mean, ball could carry out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen that, especially a lot of Sunday games in Kansas City where we've seen a decent amount of high-scoring games. So I don't mind some of the bats here for Texas as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think there is some power there. Let's go wrap things up here with the FanDuel Punch Out. Be sure to check out DaveFantasyCafe.com for all the great tools and content.